Something I've felt really strongly about for a long time now is about the protection of the vulnerable in the world and the protection of the vulnerable parts within ourselves. And sex education is one of these topics that is a bit of a vulnerable spot for a lot of people, and in the world culture maybe a little bit taboo still in different areas with different peoples. But the great thing over here in Western Australia is that recently I found this book that's called Talk Soon, Talk Often, and it's got recommendations on how to do sex education with kids from the time that they're born. So I was saying on the blog, on the written blog, that I feel like this book should be distributed to people during their pre-birth, during the pregnancy, or even when they're thinking about getting pregnant, period. And that this should be introduced as a part of parenting. And they're talking all about communication there, that communication is so key. And I thought that's wonderful, because sometimes when people have come to the office to me and they've told me that they've had sexual exploitation or sexual abuse that they've suffered, a lot of the time it happens under that atmosphere, that environment of not being allowed to communicate, not being allowed to learn about these things. And if we haven't been educated about these things, then sometimes it's like we're a sitting duck out there. So we need to educate the children, we need to educate everybody around the world. And one of my best friends was telling me this story about how people were actually going around doing some sex education, educating people living in poverty about contraception, and they had a latex condom and they were describing how you can use it as a contraceptive, and they put it on a broomstick, and they were sharing this with all these people. And then they came back later and the people had actually put the condoms onto their broomsticks, which was a little bit, when my best friend told me at the time, I suppose I was surprised and took it as a little bit humorous at the time. But then I reflected on it and thought that's really sad, because the people, because of a misunderstanding there, they got miseducated and they've ended up not having contraception and not protection from sexually transmitted diseases as well. So it highlights the danger of misunderstandings and miseducation, which is a big topic that I'm focusing on with the science of the mind. A good friend has told me recently this term uneducation, and I haven't really heard that term before, about uneducation, but they were talking about this miseducation, that it almost uneducates us. It almost fills up our mind with ideas that are going to hold us back, that actually reduce our functioning and health and happiness. And I can see how this is really true, and I thought it's a really good term, that uneducation. I feel like I've been freeing myself from uneducation for a lot of my life, and just trying to use the science of the mind to question things and look at things and observe things and check out the honesty that people bring to me, and my own honesty, to look inside and work out what actually is the correct understanding here, what actually works and gets us the good results. So for protection from STDs of the sexual type and of the socially transmissible type that I've been talking about, the best protection from STDs, I'm saying, is compassion, caring about other people, sharing education, sharing understandings, making sure, checking back in with them, caring enough about them to check back in with them and make sure that they understand it correctly, that they're following the correct cause and effect equation there to get the desired effects, to protect people from these socially transmissible viruses of feeling not good enough, feeling shamed. Because just because somebody else is trying to shame us, is judging us with a judgmental attitude, doesn't mean we need to go into a victim role of that. We don't need to take that on board as being our problem. We can just see it as being that other person's lack of education, that other person's poverty of health, and still feel really great about ourselves. The importance of protection. So I'm saying this is the the best protection against STDs of the sexual type and of the social type, socially transmissible diseases and sexually transmissible diseases, is education, sharing knowledge and information, sharing power, empowering peoples all around the world, and helping people to understand about the dangers of sexual interactions and the dangers of social interactions. It's one of the big things that strikes me as a clinical psychologist. Never really heard anyone else talking about this, about what's the actual cause of social anxiety. And it's so obvious to me, having trained myself in the science of the mind, and just to be honest, that people are scared in social environments because of the danger, the real threat to their safety of getting criticized, getting judged, getting rejected, that they might have experienced in the past, and that people actually fear this more than they fear death. So people have had some really bad experiences getting socially transmissible diseases and not having a protection there. So I'm putting out the science of the mind now and here to protect you. So use the protection and enjoy good health.